computer. Okay. And then I'm going to share screen. Let's shoot desktop, that's better. Slideshow, play from the start. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna alhamdulillah. Oh, by the way, hang on 1 second. Let me just make sure. Okay, I think mom is here. The iPhone must be mom. Is everybody able to hear me?
Yes.
Good. I'm just going to go ahead and mute everybody again. That way, you guys can unmute yourselves if you want to, if you have any questions during the lecture or if anything goes wrong. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. We begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We thank Him, we seek His assistance, and we seek forgiveness from Him for our bad deeds, and we seek refuge with Him from the evil consequences of our bad deeds. Whosoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has guided, nobody can misguide. And whomsoever Allah allows to go astray because of their bad deeds, no one can then guide them to the right path. I bear witness that there is no deity, nothing worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is his slave and final messenger. We've been talking about over last week about last will and testament, and last week we talked about living will and last will. We didn't go into much detail about the living will part because living will, even though it's necessary, it's typically related to end-of-life medical decisions when it comes to your, if you're terminally ill. What we spent a lot more time on last time was last will and testament and how you should go about writing yours. And I gave you some details, not a lot, but some details regarding last will and testament and what it should contain and the salient features of a last will and testament. I gave you an example using my own. But it turned out last time, and the feedback that I got was that it wasn't detailed enough. And that's a good thing. That's a good feedback. And today I'm going to go into a lot more details, how to write your last will and testament, and what salient features it must contain, and how your last will and testament should be executed, and how your estate, meaning if somebody who is the deceased, not your, but the deceased estate should be distributed, should be disposed of once the person in question passes away. So today we're going to talk about that. Let's get into it. We're going to continue talking about the last will and testament and the salient features that it contains. I'm going to give you some details on what is called Ilm-ul-Faraidh. Ilm-ul-Faraidh and is what it means, etc. I'm going to talk about that. And segueing into that, I'm going to talk about the Islamic laws of inheritance and a little bit, just a touching point on the Islamic laws of maintenance and the difference between the two. What is the difference between inheritance and maintenance? I will give you some pointers on that as well, and why it's necessary to understand the two in context. Because the law of inheritance, the knowledge of the law of inheritance is important, but without the knowledge of the laws of maintenance, it's difficult to understand why, the wisdom behind why inheritance is divided a certain way. Then I'm going to go into some basic principles regarding your last will and testament and how you should go about creating it. And finally, we're going to go into what was given to me last time. Can you give us a method of calculating shares? And today I'm going to ask for a volunteer for this exercise. I'm going to ask somebody on the line, and we're going to assume that you are the person in question and you are writing your last will and testament. And we're going to calculate your shares in that as an exercise. And that will conclude our lecture today. So inshallah, let's get started. So what is Ilm-ul-Faraidh? Roughly translated, Ilm-ul-Faraidh means that the knowledge of the obligatory shares. Now, what do we mean by that? The knowledge of the obligatory shares is what portion of the estate of the deceased should be given to which relatives, according to what shares, etc. The rules that are derived from the Quran and Sunnah, letting us know what portions of the estate of the deceased are to be given to which relatives is known as Ilm-ul-Faraidh. Basically meaning that the details of 1/3 goes to this person, 1/2 goes to this person, 1/4 goes to this person, etc., etc. The Quran and Sunnah have dictated these rules in details, which portion of the estate of the deceased are going to be given to which relatives. And this is what is referred to as Ilm-ul-Faraidh, or the knowledge of the obligatory shares or obligatory portions. Ilm-ul-Faraidh is actually one part, or going to be one part, or actually the last part of your last will and testament. And I will go through the first few parts of your last will and testament and the final part of your last will and testament in this lecture today. One thing to keep very strict note of in this regard is that no one other than Allah gets to dictate who gets what portion of the estate of the deceased, including the deceased. Meaning that once a person passes away, once a Muslim passes away, specifically, not a person, because this does not, the knowledge of Ilm-ul-Faraidh does not necessarily apply to non-Muslims. But when a Muslim passes away, the way that his estate, what he leaves behind as far as assets or wealth is concerned, is to be distributed among his surviving relatives, cannot be dictated by anyone other than Allah SWT. And by the way, that also means that it cannot be dictated by the person who is writing the will as well. He must follow the rules laid down by Allah and His Messenger specifically. He cannot make decisions by himself of how his estate is to be disposed of after he dies. No one other than Allah gets to dictate these rules, because no matter what, if we were to do this ourselves, number one, we are human. We have our own interests. We have our own way of thinking. No matter what, we will somehow end up doing injustice to someone without realizing it. And that is not permitted. Also, if people were allowed to dictate their own, then the beneficiaries, what we mean by the relatives or anybody who is receiving portion of the estate, will somehow, one way or another, somehow end up feeling as if they were cheated, as if they were, they weren't given the quote-unquote fair share. The reason is that no matter what, we are limited human beings. We have a limited time frame. We have a limited life. And during this lifetime, we have certain struggles. We have financial struggles. We have physical struggles. And because we have interests, because we have personal interests, if this were to be allowed to be given to us, number one, we might cause harm to others. And number two, no matter what the division of the estate might be, somebody will feel like I was wronged. This is why Allah SWT, one of the major reasons, Allah SWT has made it impermissible for you to dictate your own estate and how it is to be disposed of. You have some limited capacity doing wasiyah. And what we mean by wasiyah, we will talk about in this lecture as well. You have a limited capacity what you can give to whom. You do have some choice. But even that is dictated by Allah and His Messenger. You're not allowed to do that yourself. In Surah Al-Ahzab, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Sahih International Translation is as follows. Actually, it's a good idea to recite it, so inshallah I'm going to recite it. A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مؤمنة إذا قضى الله ورسوله أمرا أن يكون لهم الخيرة من أمرهم ومن يعص الله ورسوله فقد ضل ضلالا مبينا. Sahih International Translation is as follows: it is not for a believing man or a believing woman when Allah and His Messenger have dictated a matter that they should have any choice about their affair. And whosoever disobeys Allah and His Messenger has certainly strayed into clear error. Specifically, when Allah SWT has dictated a certain portion of the estate goes to the wife of the deceased or to the daughter of the deceased, the son or the husband or any of the male surviving heirs have no right to say, that's not fair, that person shouldn't be getting it, etc., etc. You don't get to dictate that. Similarly, if the Sharia has dictated that a certain portion goes to a male relative, the female should not be objecting, this isn't fair, that's not the way it's supposed to be, etc., etc. That's what this verse is dictating to us, that once Allah and His Messenger have dictated something, we don't get to decide after that. Within the bounds of what Allah and His Messenger have dictated, we have certain decisions to make, and those are left to us, alhamdulillah. We will talk about those in just a second. But the reason is that until and unless we can go beyond, and which we cannot, we are human beings, we have limitations, and we have biases. No matter what, we will either end up causing injustice to someone, or just because we're beneficiaries, we will somehow be left that the injustice was done unto us. That's why the dictation of the shares are given specifically and in extreme detail in the Quran and the Sunnah, and we don't get to tell, or we don't get to dictate how that is to be distributed. One of the things that is absolutely important to mention, and this is what I'm going to try to come up with, that's probably going to be my next lecture, which is going to be the Islamic law of maintenance. Some details, some, and actually not details, some introduction of the Islamic law of maintenance. Not only does Islam dictate what portion of the estate and who it should be given to of the deceased, Islam dictates obviously what part, what portion, 1/3, 1/2, 1/4, etc. should be given to whom. But once that is done, once the estate has been disposed of, Islam also dictates the responsibilities of all parties after the death of the deceased. Meaning that if a person dies and he is survived by a son, a daughter, and a wife, Islam also dictates the responsibilities of these parties after the estate has been disposed of. Once the share of the estate has been given to the wife, and a certain portion of the estate has been given to the daughter, and a certain portion of the estate has been given to the son, what they are to do with that money and how they are to be spending that money is also dictated by Islam. And it is difficult to understand the wisdom behind why certain portions are given to certain people, and specifically why the portion of a man is twice that of a woman, without knowing the rules related to these specifics of maintenance. One objection that comes from a lot from non-Muslims, and even sometimes from Muslims, number one is, why is it that the portion of a man is twice that of a woman? Oh my God, that is unjust, blah, blah, blah. We've heard this before, and it's not going to be the last time we're going to hear it. When it comes to the knowledge of maintenance, the laws of maintenance that Islam dictates, what Islam wants when it comes to maintenance is that it seeks to relieve women of financial responsibilities. Anything that Anybody with even a cursory knowledge of laws of inheritance and laws of maintenance will understand this, that Islam specifically seeks to relieve women of financial responsibilities, even their own expenses. What does that mean? Once the estate of the deceased is disposed of and it is determined a certain portion goes to the mother, certain portion goes to the daughter, and a certain portion goes to the son, a large portion of it is going to the son, yes. But remember, now that son is responsible because of law of maintenance for giving maintenance to his mother, meaning the wife of the deceased, and his sister, meaning the daughter of the deceased. And those two, meaning the wife of the deceased or the mother of the son, and the daughter of the deceased or the sister of the son, they're not responsible even for their own living expenses. It is the responsibility of the son to maintain them. What does that mean? They must live in a house similar to his. They must have a lifestyle similar to his. They must go to the doctor similar to his. They must eat similar to what he eats. Basically, their standard of living, in English what we call standard of living, must be the same as that of the man, who is now responsible for maintenance of these women. And therefore, Islam seeks to place said responsibilities of maintenance upon men. And because Islam seeks to place said responsibilities upon men, societies where rules that Islam has dictated when it comes to inheritance and maintenance, wherever societies do not follow the rules of Islamic maintenance and inheritance, will develop a preference for males. That is just the truth of it. Human beings respond to incentives. And if in a society, all males are responsible for maintaining women, and let's assume for argument's sake, you give the women no inheritance, you don't give them any share in the wealth, any share, and on top of that, which happens to in Pakistani society, not only are the women not inheritors of their father's estates, they also take the money from the family, and quite a significant portion. Sometimes the family has to cut their own guts to pay the marital dowry. So what ends up happening? Not only did the women inherit no wealth, they have no financial independence, they are a burden on the family. And until you implement the laws of inheritance and maintenance specified by Islam, this preference for males will not go away until and unless we implement the Islamic rules of inheritance and maintenance. We should expect this bias, the bias towards wanting men and disliking women, wanting sons and disliking daughters. We should expect this to continue until we implement these rules. Why is that? In an Islamic society, what Islam seeks to do is twofold. Number one, it seeks to create a moral compass for the society that, number one, you should not have a dislike or a distaste toward women. They're a creation of Allah. They are female servants, female slaves of Allah, and they are beloved to Allah. The society should not dislike them. Islam seeks to create this moral compass, this moral atmosphere of valuing the genders equally. But it also seeks to create a legal framework of inheritance and maintenance in which women are given their due rights, and basically it incentivizes society in such a way that females are then no longer disliked, or men are no longer preferred. what we saw in pre-Islamic Arabia, was that women were despised, daughters born, and they were buried immediately after they were born. Islam created two things: a moral framework for valuing the genders equally, for not giving preference to men over women. And number two, it created a legal framework of inheritance laws and maintenance laws in which women were given rights and responsibilities. Accordingly, therefore, once Islam came, these people who used to despise women, their preferences changed completely. They didn't care if their child was female or male, as long as it was healthy, because of this framework. And until we implement Islamic rules of inheritance maintenance, we cannot expect this bias to go away from society. Why is that? People respond to incentives. And if you incentivize males to be better and you incentivize females to be worse, sorry, this bias will continue. Now, back to last will and testament. In the portion that I talked about in the last will and testament last time, I talked a little bit about, and I didn't give you enough details, and today I'm going to talk about the details of the funeral and burial rites. When you are writing your last will and testament, and this is a section in which you should definitely write down your wishes related to your funeral and burial rites. And specifically, if you are a new Muslim, somebody who's come to Islam recently, this is absolutely essential. And not that it is not essential for Muslims, it is also highly beneficial for Muslims as well. Number one, you should nominate at least 3 people, and in case basically absence of one of them. So for example, you can say, I nominate my son, and in case he's not around, I nominate my brother. In case he's not around, I nominate my cousin, so on and so forth. You should nominate at least 3 people who will be responsible for conducting your funeral and burial rites. Now, what does that mean? You are going to empower them related to how your funeral will be conducted, where your funeral will be conducted, who will conduct your funeral prayer, which graveyard you will be buried in, etc., etc. You should nominate these people. And the reason you should nominate these people also is because when people pass away, I've seen it turn into a circus. This person is going to be buried back in my village, which is 50 miles away. I don't care, no matter what. This is my brother you're talking about. And then the son starts screaming, no, I want my father to be buried where he's closer to me. And this just goes on and on and on, and the poor guy just passes away, and fights happen between people. If you have specifically written in your last will and testament, you've nominated 3 people that in case of your absence, the next one will take over, and the next one will take over. These people will be responsible for conducting your funeral and burial rites. They're the ones who are going to make the final decision where you're going to be buried, who is going to conduct your funeral prayer, how your body is going to be washed, etc., etc. Now, a general guideline for the funeral to be Islamic is sufficient, meaning you can just write in your last will and testament that you would like your funeral to be an Islamic funeral, and that much is sufficient. But if you would like, you can also put additional details, such as that you do not want your burial to be delayed unnecessarily. And you can dictate what those necessary delays might be. For example, the necessary delay might be that you want to be buried in a Muslim graveyard, but the Muslim graveyard just happens to be far away. You died in a place where there is no nearby Muslim graveyard. So, you can delay your burial to transport your body to the nearest Muslim graveyard, etc. You can put that detail in your last will and testament. You can also decide where you would like to be buried unless the first condition is not broken. Meaning, if, let's assume for argument's sake, you happen to be about roughly the same distance from two different Muslim burial grounds, you can dictate, hey, you know what, let's assume for argument's sake you're close to the end of your life, and you dictate, you know what, I would prefer to be buried in the following graveyard because that's where my wife is buried, that's where my sister is buried. I would like to be buried in that graveyard. But this should not this should not overcome the first condition. This should not violate the first condition, that just because the burial ground of your sister or your wife is 100 miles away, whereas another one is 10 miles away, you should always give a preference to what is closer, because you should not be delaying your burial. Similarly, you can give dictates as to your body should be facing the Qibla, that it should be always in a Muslim graveyard, and finally that there should be no marking or no building of any kind, no big headstones, etc., or such on the grave itself. You can put these in your last will and testament. Here are some evidences for that. Narrated Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anha that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, hasten the funeral rites, meaning be quick about performing the funeral and be quick about burying the person in question. And this is something that I've seen many non-Muslim be inspired by. I will give you a quick story. I have two friends I work with who are both from Ghana, and this is something that they're both frustrated with when it comes to their culture. They sometimes take months, and I mean months, to bury their dead. What ends up happening is, obviously, it's a dead body. It starts to decay. And a lot of times, these final funeral rites cannot be properly performed and the casket cannot be opened. It's because they've kept the body above surface for months and months upon end. And one thing that when I spoke to them about the quickness in burial, one of my Ghanaian friends, he said, I would become Muslim just because of the rules related to your burials, man. I'm telling you, it is so good. I told him about when my aunt passed away, and I told him, I was like, from the time that the doctor declared her medically dead to the time that she had been washed, cleaned, prayed upon, and buried was less than 24 hours. And he said, wow, that is amazing. And he said that this causes so much problems and etc., etc. I'm not going to go into details of that. The Prophet ﷺ's commandment is to hasten the funeral and burial rites. Another ruling related to your burial and to your grave is that it was narrated by Jabir radiyallahu ta'ala anha that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam forbade the plastering over graves, sitting on them, and erecting structures over them. Meaning, if it is going to be a grave, it should either be level with the ground or a hand span above the ground, and it should not have a building on it. Should not have markings, some kind of plasters, large headstones, etc. Erecting structures, erecting buildings over graves is forbidden. Narrated by Imam Muslim in his Sahih. Now, let's get into the details of the payment or the disposal of the estate of the deceased. And the order of the payment is as follows. And this order cannot be changed. Number one, in case the deceased passes away and he leaves something behind, the very first thing that must be discharged, the very first thing that must be discharged must be given out from his estate, from his assets, is the debts he owes. If he owes somebody any money, if he owes bills, if he owes medical expenses, even funeral expenses, should first be paid from the estate of the deceased. Once the debts are discharged, all what he owes to somebody all those obligations have been discharged. The second is what is called the bequeathal. And we will talk about what is bequeathal in just a second. Bequeathal is what portion of the estate of the deceased is allowed to give to someone that he wants to, with certain limitations. He's allowed to bequeath a certain portion of the remainder of his estate either to charity or to somebody in question or to an individual or a group or an organization, whatever he wants, he's allowed to bequeath it. And we'll go into the details of the bequeathal, how much you're allowed to bequeath, who you're allowed to bequeath it to, etc. in just a second. Finally, once the debts are discharged and after the debts are discharged, the remainder of the estate, the bequeathal is discharged, whatever is remainder of the estate after that, that portion is distributed in inheritance. So first you discharge the debts, then you give the bequeathal, then you do the inheritance. That's the order of the payments. This is what is dictated in Surah An-Nisa. Oh, I forgot to write the verse number down. I think it is verse 12 in Surah An-Nisa, or 11, I could be wrong. You can, after the lecture, if you want, I can give you the number of this. But what we're interested in is the bolded and underlined section. In this verse, Allah SWT goes into what portion of the wives and the children and the debts, etc., what portion should be given. But the bolded, underlined is what we're interested in and what we're after. That only after the bequest or the bequeathal has been made and debts are discharged, only after that can the inheritance occur. Meaning, the inheritance will only be given after all the debts of the deceased are discharged and any bequest or bequeathal has been made. That's been discharged. After that, the inheritors will get portions according to Ilm-ul-Faraidh, according to the portions that they were given. So, in your last will and testament, you should also have a section detailing the debts and expenses that should be paid first, including, number one, your funeral expenses. If there is a grave plot that has to be purchased, if the grave has to be dug up, you should be given certain money for burial or funeral expenses. I have to say, in America, it's really expensive to die. Thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. Muslim countries actually pretty cheap to die. In America, it's super expensive to die. But whatever those funeral expenses are, those should be discharged first. Second, any medical expenses or any debts that you accrued as a result of your final illness. Let's assume, for argument's sake, you were in the hospital for a lengthy period of time and you have accrued certain medical debt. Those debt should be paid first. And like I said last time, according to American law, death discharges certain debts. But according to Islamic law, no, it does not. Meaning, if medical expenses are outstanding and you have medical debts, and just because the hospital can't collect because you died, that does not mean Allah SWT will forgive you for those medical debts on the Yawm al-Qiyamah. You should discharge those medical debts or expenses from the estate of the deceased, and you should be also paying any outstanding bills of the deceased. Now, for example, do not take these lightly. A lot of people tend to take these lightly, but this is another debt upon the deceased. What does that include? Your cell phone bill, your gas bill, your water bill, your electric bill. The lawnmower came and he charged $50 to mow your grass. That is outstanding. Pay him. Somebody cleaned your house. The maid came. A payment to her is outstanding. Pay her. All these outstanding bills are debts, and they must be paid, and do not take these lightly. Because if you die and these debts are not discharged, Allah SWT will settle these debts on Yawmul Qiyamah. Don't you worry, nobody will be wronged. If that lawnmower comes on Yawmul Qiyamah and he says, Ya Allah, this man owed me $50 for mowing his lawn, he never paid me, Allah SWT will make him whole on Yawmul Qiyamah, believe you me. $50 worth of good deeds will be taken from your account and put in his, or $50 worth of bad deeds will be taken out of his account and put into yours. That is going to happen. Don't take this lightly. Any unpaid zakat, meaning, let's assume for argument's sake that you don't pay zakat monthly. Some people like to pay zakat annually, which is fine, no problem. They pay it once a year. But let's assume for argument's sake that, like a lot of people like to do, they pay zakat in Ramadan and you died 1 month or 2 months before Ramadan came. Means you owe 10 months or 12, 11 months worth of zakat. That is a debt upon you and you have to pay it. That zakat must be paid, meaning that debt, that obligation must be discharged before the rest of your estate can be given out. And finally, if you were able and if you had enough money, and let's assume for argument's sake that you came into enough money that you could perform Hajj, but you died 1 month or 2 months before Hajj, meaning you, or actually, that's not a good example. You couldn't make Hajj that year, but it was obligatory on you. You had intention of making it the next year, meaning you were able to perform Hajj, you had the money to perform Hajj, but you didn't. You decided or you intended to make the Hajj next year. That unperformed Hajj is still an obligation on you, and somebody should perform that Hajj upon your behalf, and that expense should also be taken out of your estate before the remainder can be distributed to your inheritors. This should also be in your last will and testament. Finally, this is one thing that a lot of people have questions about. What part of my estate am I allowed to bequeath, and who am I allowed to bequeath it to? Now, what do I mean by bequeathal? Once the deceased has passed, and number one, his debts are discharged, meaning all his debts that we talked about just a second ago have been given away from his estate. All the debts have been satisfied. Whatever is remaining, the deceased in his will, meaning you, if you're writing your own will, you are allowed to bequeath 1/3 of that remainder according to your wishes, up to 1/3. There are certain limitations, but you're allowed to give it to whoever you want with the following limitations. What are those limitations? You are allowed to bequeath up to 1/3, and it cannot exceed 1/3. And even then, 1/3 is allowed, but less than 1/3 is recommended, meaning 33.33% of your remainder of the estate, once the debts are satisfied, can go to whoever you want. It can go in charity. It can go to any individual you want, with the following exceptions. The individual, organization, or charity, or etc. that you're giving this money to cannot be one of the people who inherits from you. What does that mean? For example, if somebody likes one son better, he has 2 sons, and he likes one son better than another, right? He just has a favorite. And because of this bequeathal, he says, you know what? I'm going to give 1/3 of my wealth, meaning I bequeath 1/3 of my wealth to one of my sons, the one I like better. And once this bequeathal is satisfied, the remainder of the estate will be divided among my sons equally. This is a way, this is a type of injustice. You cannot do that. Meaning, 1/3 of the bequeathal, 1/3 of your estate that you're giving in bequeathal cannot go to any of your inheritors, whether it be your son, your wife, your daughter, or somebody who is going to inherit from you. This amount also cannot exceed 1/3, and you cannot do it with the intention of depriving the inheritors. What does that mean? Means that you just simply don't like your inheritors or something, and you know what? I'm going to show them. I'm going to give 1/3 of it in charity because I don't want them to get it. This intention is an evil intention, and stay away from this intention. You do not give it with the intention of deprivation of your inheritors. You can give it with the intention of, I would like to give for charity, and that I would like that to be a good deed on behalf of myself. No problem, you can do that. But you cannot do it with the intention of deprivation of the inheritors. Why? That I just don't like my inheritors. I'm going to give them a taste of what I can do. 1/3 of all of the estate is going to the following charity. Don't do it with that intention. Do it with the intention of doing a good deed, and then you're allowed to give it to whoever you want, whether it be a charity or an individual, as long as that individual is not an inheritor who is going to get from and who is going to inherit or mandatorily inherit from your estate. That is allowed. And finally, in your last will and testament, you should contain a portion of how the distribution of the remainder of your estate is going to be, and this is called Ilm-ul-Faraidh, or knowledge of the obligatory portions. Distribution of the remainder after the deceased has passed away. What were the 3 things that we were talking about in order? Number 1, once the deceased has passed away, you perform the burial rites, and you quickly perform their funeral and burial rites. But what to do with the estate? There are 3 things that must be done. First, you must discharge their debts. Second, you must give the bequeathal to whoever the intended beneficiary of the bequeathal is. And third, this is what we get to the final part, the distribution of the remainder, whatever remains of the estate, is going to go in what is called Ilm-ul-Faraidh, or the obligatory portions. And what is meant by that? The Quran and Sunnah. There has been lots of details in number 1, Surah An-Nisa. And the Sahih collections of Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim have lots and lots and lots and lots, I cannot say lots enough, of details on who is supposed to get what and what portion. There's lots of details on this. But I'm going to give you, my listeners, a very quick way of doing it. And I need somebody from the audience to be a volunteer. Somebody, not the children, sorry kids, it can't be you. But somebody, I'm going to unmute everybody. Somebody volunteer to be my, what do you say, example? Guinea pig, I guess. Yes, thank you.
Okay, me.
Okay, Dad, you're going to be a guinea pig. We are going to go to.
अच्छा मुझे ले लो बेटे फैसल.
Okay. Hang on a second.
हो गया volunteer हो गया कोई?
Yeah. Dad volunteered already. This is a. By the way, can you see my screen? Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, what do you see on my screen? Islamic inheritance calculator. Do you see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody else, I'm going to put you on mute. I'm just going to unmute Dad, okay? Unmute. Dad, can hang on one second, Dad. Dad, can you hear me?
I am on mute.
Okay, excellent. Now I can hear you as well. Now, the purpose of this Islamic inheritance calculator is that, by the way, I'll give you a quick interesting fact regarding inheritance
Can you come close to the mic, please? A little bit.
A little bit close? Okay. I'm right next to my machine, but I guess I'll try to speak louder. Now, one of the things that you will realize is these calculations can become very, very, very complicated, in the sense that when somebody who passes away has lots and lots of relatives, and it happens in an Islamic society all the time, right? The deceased in question has 2 wives and 2 half sons and 3 half daughters and a full son from a previous marriage in which the wife passed away, and he has half brothers and half sisters and half paternal cousins. It becomes really, really complicated. One of the things that happened during, by the way, everybody knows, right, that algebra is an Arabic word. One of the reasons that one of the impetuses behind developing algebra was this calculation, these portions. It became very, very difficult. It's like, how are you supposed to know what portion of 1/3, 1/2, 1/4, goes like this? What they did was they created something called algebra, and they came up with fractions to create what portion of the estate is supposed to go to whom. But modern days, obviously, we love convenience. If you don't feel like reading, and most of you don't, and even I, when I started, I was thinking that I'm going to go into the details of the hadith, and there's just so much detail, we cannot possibly cover it in a lecture. But people have created, may Allah SWT give them lots of reward for us, simple calculators. They tell us what portion is supposed to go to who. You're just supposed to enter the relatives of the deceased. So number 1, dad. Let's assume, for argument's sake, you're the person in question. How many wives do you have?
Roxana?
1.
Okay.
How many sons?
1.
1. How many daughters?
3.
How many grandsons?
3.
Dad?
Children, grandson 1.
Dad? Only
Yeah,
son?
grandson किसे कह रहे हो तुम?
Right
आया
here.
नहीं है?
Do you read? Do you read on the?
No, I don't. I can't read that.
Oh, you can't read that. Okay, that's why I was asking if you could read my screen. Okay, never mind.
It's now I enlarged it. Yes. So
Okay.
no, I don't have. My son doesn't have a son.
Okay, so that's 0. Granddaughters, only sons' daughters are eligible. Do you see?
0.
That's why I was asking if you could see my screen. How many fathers?
0.
0. Mothers? 0. Grandfather? 0. Paternal grandfather? 0. Maternal grandfather? 0. How many full brothers?
How many full brothers? 6.
Brothers who share the same father and the mother with the deceased. Basically, full brothers. 6 brothers. How many sisters?
0.
0. No surviving sisters, obviously. Brothers who share the same father but a different mother. That's a 0. Paternal sisters is a 0. Maternal brothers is 0. Maternal sisters is 0. Nephews. You don't even remember, do you?
So many, mashallah. Huh?
MashaAllah. Go ahead. Give it a guess.
Nephew, let's say 10.
10 nephews. Okay. Paternal nephews, only paternal brother, son is eligible. Daughter is not eligible.
Call it 5. I don't know.
Okay. Full nephews, sons. Full brother, sons, son. You have any? Let's say 5. The reason I asked for a volunteer is you will see how complicated, like even just doing this, right now we're doing no calculations ourselves. We're not looking up a hadith. We're not looking up the Quran. We're not looking up the Sunnah. None of that. All we're doing is numbers, and still it's becoming difficult, right? Paternal brother, son. 2. Fathers, full brothers. You don't have any surviving fathers, full brothers. Fathers, paternal brothers, none. Fathers, full brothers is 0. 0. Fathers, full brothers, sons are 0. Fathers, paternal brothers, sons, etc., etc. The definitions of all of these people are given. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you don't have a husband. You have a wife, 1 son, 3 daughters. All of this detail is in here. Okay? Now what we do is this final button. We say calculate inheritance, and it will give you the shares. It will give you the relatives category. Your wife is supposed to get 1/8 of your total estate. Your son is supposed to get 7/20 or 35% of your estate. Among your daughters is going to be 52%. The remainder of the estate is going to go to the daughters. And this is your calculation right here. Meaning, daughter 1 gets 7/40, daughter 2 gets 7/40. So there is going to be a total of 1 share. The son gets 7/20, the daughters each get 7/40, and the wife gets 1/8 for a total of 1 or 100%. Do you see the breakdown right here?
Yes. फैसल बहुत ही बेहतरीन काम किया तुमने यार. You are my son. That's fantastic homework. अब now मुझे एक क्विक क्वेश्चन का जवाब दो. थोड़ा सा टाइपिंग से हटूंगा, बहुत ज्यादा नहीं हटूंगा.
बोले.
Let's say I'm leaving behind after paying my bills and loans and this and that. और वो तो खुद ही ले लेंगे भाई, अब दे या ना दे. ये बैंक ऑफ अमेरिका वाले और पीएनसी बैंक वाले, चलो वो तो हो गया. टोटल मिला के मैं $3 लाख छोड़ के मर रहा हूँ. Assuming me and my wife go check out at the same time. थोड़ी देर के लिए.
No, then that's a bad assumption. According to this calculation, that's a bad assumption, because according to this calculation, you're leaving a wife behind.
Okay, let's say I leave my wife behind. And before I do anything else, after paying all my debts, including the lady who comes to clean my house, I'm left with $300,000. I say that, okay, not out of anger for my son, no, or my children or anything. I still want to, because I want to be obedient, 1/3 or $100,000 I want to give away in charity.
Yeah.
And and that comes to my mind. I mean, that's a real life, not a guinea pig thought. It's a real life thought. That, okay, I make you, my son, my only son, trustee of that $100,000.
Okay.
And now I want, and I'll take my wife's signature on it. I can. That, okay, my son will spend this money according to these wishes. And my wish, for example, is that, okay, I will run a charitable educational foundation in Pakistan, for example.
Yeah.
That it means I'm leaving 1 crore rupees to be disposed of for charity to educate the poor girls or something, of educating them in this way or that way. Can I do that? Yes or no?
Yes, you absolutely can. What you can do is make your son a trustee of what is called the wasiyah, meaning that I cannot take money from that, right? What the question you're asking is, the $100,000, I will be responsible for that $100,000, but I cannot take money from it. I'm only allowed to spend it in charity. Yes, you're allowed to do that. No problem.
So let me ask one more question. Let's say,
by the way, sorry to cut you off, but it is not recommended. I'll tell you one more time. A lot of people think that 1/3 in charity is a good thing. No, actually less than that is recommended. The Prophet ﷺ, the reason is that Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu ta'ala one time got really sick. And when he got sick, he said, "Oh Rasulullah, I would like to give all of my wealth when I die in charity." The Prophet ﷺ forbade it. Don't do that. He said, "I would like to give 2/3. The Prophet ﷺ still forbade it. And he said, "I would like to give 1/3. And the Prophet said, "Okay, I'll allow that, but even that is too much. Give less than that." Meaning, 1/3 is allowed, but less than 1/3 is recommended. Okay, just giving you.
Okay, no. So let me put my question. Okay, not $100,000. $80,000.
That's fine.
Let's not get into that debate.
That's fine.
So, and I asked you to go to Pakistan and run this, and you are going by air to Pakistan. Can you charge that money from that $80,000?
Okay, now we're getting into the details of that. If I'm going for, basically, it's on me. If I'm going for personal reasons and I start to charge that money against that, and I'm like, you know what, I was going for the charity, etc. Then Allah SWT will get me on Yawm al-Qiyamah. I can't do that. But
in fact, okay, let's change the subject now. I'm done. मुझे तुमने सवाल का जवाब सब लोगों को बहुत ही ज़्यादा अच्छा दिया है. अल्लाह भला करे तुम्हारा. I'm really proud of you. तो अगर इसको जरा कंटिन्यू कर सकते हैं, 12 बज रहे हैं इस वक्त, अगली दफा के लिए. और इस वक्त यूँ समझो कि मैं सबसे ये सिर्फ ये बहस नहीं कर रहा हूँ. I will write it down. I will put it in some kind of a bonded agreement with you, and so that, okay, whenever that happens, when that happens, you become my trustee. I trust you. You are the most trustworthy person on my radar, on all my acquaintances. Not that other people are less trustworthy, but naturally, who will I trust if not my only son? And who is bringing such a delightful thoughts to discussion. So when with that I'm done. अब तुम सवाल जारी रखो अगर आप जारी रखो.
Okay, basically I am done as well. The reason I'm done is because that was the last slide. In conclusion, what did we discuss today? What we discussed today was, number one, the major salient features of what should be contained in your last will and testament, including how you want your burial to occur, who you should nominate for your burial and funeral rites. Second, we talked about once your burial and funeral is done, funeral and burial, obviously that's the order, is done, how your estate is going to be divided. We talked about, number one, first, your debts and expenses must be paid. Second, your bequeathal must be discharged. Then third, whatever is remainder is what we did via a calculator. We put in all your possible inheritors, and we put in the calculator, and the calculator spat out for us the portions of each of them. Okay? And that is what we did today. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. I'm going to open up the floor. I'm going to unmute everybody, and actually everybody is muted now. If you want, you can unmute yourself and ask a question.
Jazakallah.
Okay. If there's anybody else trying to talk, I cannot hear you because you have muted. If you want, you can unmute yourself and ask a question. Okay.
फैसल बेटे की औलाद को दे सकते हैं लेकिन बेटियों की औलाद को नहीं दे सकते ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स.
According to this, no.
अच्छा.
Paternal. So, Khala, we can do an exercise with you.
अच्छा.
So, who is the deceased, or who is trying to? Are you writing your will or Chachu's will?
नहीं अभी तो कुछ भी नहीं, लेकिन मैं सिर्फ सवाल मेरे ज़हन में आया था क्योंकि तुमने जब परज़े से पूछा कि मतलब तुम्हारे जैसे तुम्हारी औलाद को तो दे सकते हैं परज़ाई, लेकिन जैसे कमल की औलाद को नहीं दे सकते.
According to this calculator, no. And this is why the reason I'm saying according to this calculator is because it's not in my knowledge. Okay? Again, going according to the Islamic calculator, people have spent lifetimes learning this knowledge and putting this calculator together just to make my life easy. According to this calculator, no. But if you have this is why I keep saying, if you have very specific questions, I'm not a scholar, don't ask me.
नहीं, just मेरे ज़हन में एक सवाल आया था तो ज़ाहिर तुम्हारे पास सके से
लेकिन इसमें ये एक थोड़ा सा शामिल हो सकता है कि अगर हम उसको वसीयत नहीं कर सकते लेकिन हम उसको गिफ्ट कर सकते हैं उसके बच्चों को.
मामा आप भूल गई
क्या
भूल गई? वसीयत कर सकते हैं. देखें, क्योंकि according to this, remember this, आप लोग ये भूल रहे हैं, जिसकी वजह से लोग बहुत कंफ्यूज हो जाते हैं. अच्छा किया आपने सवाल कर दिया, क्योंकि आपकी बेटी के बच्चे इनहेरिटर्स नहीं हो सकते, इस वजह से आपकी बेटी के बच्चे वसीयत हो सकती है. मतलब ये कि 1/3 जो वसीयत आप करना चाहते हैं वो आप उन बच्चों को दे सकते हैं। बात समझ रही है? फिर
जो बेटी के लिए वसीयत की है वो दे सकते हैं।
आप लोग सबसे पहले, इससे पहले कि और कंफ्यूजन बढ़े, मैं आप लोगों को एक 2 या 3 टर्म्स बहुत बहुत अच्छी तरह क्लियर करवाना चाह रहा हूं। ओके? क्योंकि अगर हम इसी तरह करते रहे ना, कंफ्यूजन बढ़ती रहेगी। सबसे पहले है एस्टेट, उसके बाद है डेट्स, उसके बाद है bequest और bequeathal, और उसके बाद है inheritance। एस्टेट किसे कहते हैं? तमाम के तमाम all of the assets of the deceased are called the estate। ठीक है? अभी उनके साथ आपने कुछ नहीं किया, उसका घर, उसकी गाड़ी, उसके सोना, पैसे, सब, everything is considered the estate।
फैसल मेरे बेटे अभी वहां तक नहीं जाओ, अभी हम जिंदा हैं, जिंदगी की मिसाल ले रहे हैं। I'm not talking when we are dead, I'm talking when we are alive।
When you're alive?
Yes, can we do that?
आपकी मर्जी है, लेकिन फिर आप उसमें ये देख लें कि अगर आपने किसी को गिफ्ट दिया है, किसी ग्रैंड चाइल्ड को गिफ्ट दिया है, तो आप दूसरे ग्रैंड चिल्ड्रन को भी उतना ही गिफ्ट देंगे। गिफ्टिंग में ये खतरा है, जिसकी वजह से लोगों के दिल में एक दूसरे से नफरत बढ़ सकती है कि आपने किसी एक को गिफ्ट दिया दी, दूसरे को नहीं दिया। रसूल सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने गिफ्ट देने से खास तौर पर स्पेसिफिकली कि एक बच्चे को दिया दूसरे को नहीं दिया, एक क्या नाम है पोते को दिया दूसरे नवासे को नहीं दिया, एक नवासे को दिया दूसरे को नहीं दिया, इससे आप सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने मना किया है। ठीक है? क्योंकि एक ने एक को दिया दूसरे को नहीं दिया, मुझे क्यों नहीं दिया है? इससे बिला वजह चिपकलिश बढ़ेगी। अगर एक को दे दिया तो आप दूसरे को भी देने के पाबंद हैं। बात समझ रही मामा?
हाँ 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 समझ रही हूँ।
अच्छा, अब देखें, ये टर्म्स बहुत जरूरी हैं। डेट्स को छोड़ें अभी थोड़ी देर के लिए, लेट्स फॉरगेट अबाउट डेट्स फॉर अ सेकंड। बिक्वेस्ट, हमने डेफिनेशन क्या बताई थी बिक्वेस्ट की? हम वापस आ जाते हैं पावर पॉइंट पे। 1/3 कैन बी bequeathed with the following limitations। आपकी जो एस्टेट बची है, आपने डेट्स भी निकाल दिए, जो बाकी बचा है आप 1/3, 1/3 जो बचा है उसको आप किसी को भी दे सकते हैं। अब वो कौन हो सकता है? आपने ये सवाल पूछा खाला कि क्या वो मेरी बेटी के बच्चे हो सकते हैं? बिल्कुल
हाँ,
हो सकते हैं।
बिल्कुल, हाँ, बस ये पूछना है।
क्योंकि वो इनहेरिटर्स नहीं है। बात समझ रही हैं? इनहेरिटर्स वो होंगे जिनको आप कुछ भी कर लें, आपको इनहेरिटेंस देनी पड़ेगी, आपके अच्छे भी देंगे।
ठीक है,
ठीक है? लेकिन क्योंकि आपके बेटे के बच्चे इनहेरिटर्स में हैं, उनको आप बिक्वीद नहीं कर सकते। बात समझ रही हैं?
जी जी, मैं समझ गई बेटा। हाँ,
लेकिन इस बिक्वीदल में आपकी मर्जी है, क्योंकि वो आपकी बेटी के बच्चे आपके इनहेरिटर्स में नहीं है, तो आप उनको बिक्वीद कर सकते हैं।
समझ गई।
ये फर्क बहुत बड़ा है और बहुत अच्छी तरह समझने का है। इस वजह से आपको 1/3, ये वजह है कि आपको ये अच्छी तरह पता होना चाहिए कि कौन लोग इनहेरिटर्स में से हैं। जो लोग इनहेरिटर्स में से हैं, आप उनको बिक्वीदल में से कुछ नहीं दे सकते। लेकिन जो लोग इनहेरिटर्स में नहीं है, आपकी मर्जी है, उनको आप बिक्वीदल में से दे सकते हैं। मसलन मसलन इनमें से एक, लेट्स गो बैक टू व्हाट वी वर डूइंग, एक मिनट बैक पे जाएं, फॉरवर्ड। हाँ, अब देखें, इसके अंदर क्या नाम है, पता लग गया कि इनमें से फलाने लोग कोई इनहेरिटर्स नहीं है। ठीक है? आप इनमें से किसी को भी अपनी बिक्वेस्ट में से देना चाहते दे दें, नो प्रॉब्लम।
अच्छा,
क्योंकि आपका क्वेश्चन ये था कि उसके अंदर के, और खास तौर पे मैं कैलकुलेटर पे अगर मैं वापस जाऊं, मेल खुल गई। वो ये था मेरे ख्याल में पैटर्नल नेफ्यूज, फुल नेफ्यूज, यहाँ पे कहीं से क्वेश्चन आया था, पैटर्नल ग्रैंडफादर, ग्रैंडसन्स। हाँ, only sons are eligibles, daughters sons are not eligibles। सही है? इस वजह से आपने क्वेश्चन पूछा था, राइट?
बस हाँ, यही वजह, यहीं से मैंने पूछा ना।
एग्जैक्टली। अब क्योंकि वो इनहेरिटेंस में एलिजिबल नहीं है, वो बिक्वीदल में एलिजिबल है, तो आप बिक्वीद कर दें उन्हें। सवाल हो गया? आंसर हो गया?
या बेटा सही है।
ओके, एनी अदर क्वेश्चंस फ्रॉम एनीबॉडी? चलें, ठीक है। जज़ाकल्लाह खैर एवरीवन फॉर कमिंग।
अलविदाई मेरी तरफ से एक मैसेज है। हुमा,
जी भाईजान,
ये मेरा बेटा है। आई एम सो प्राउड ऑफ हिम।
माशाल्लाह। जी जी।
आई एम सो प्राउड ऑफ हिम।
नामा ना पढ़े, मैं रिकॉर्ड कर रहा हूँ।
हाँ, तो आई एम प्राउड ऑफ यू।
अच्छा, जज़ाकल्लाह खैर।
So is your mom. चलो, खुदा हाफिज।
ओके, अल्लाह हाफिज।
सुब्हानकल्लाहुम्मा व बिहम्दिका व अशहदु अल्ला इलाहा इल्ला अंता अस्तगफिरुका व अतूबु इलैक व मा अलैना इल्ला अल बलागुल मुबीन। अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
हाफिज।
अल्लाह हाफिज।